Welcome, gentle listener, to a calm and quiet journey into the heart of the Middle Ages. Tonight, we step softly into the life of a knight not, the shining hero of tales and legends, but the man beneath the armor, carrying burdens unseen and facing a world far colder than the steel he wore. Together, let us explore the hidden truths and quiet sacrifices of knighthood, told in a gentle voice meant to soothe and reflect. You always imagined it differently. The shining armor, the noble steed, the pennant fluttering in the breeze like a ribbon tied to the wrist of fate. Your bed is little more than straw, flattened and damp from the morning mist that seeps through the beams. A rat scurries near your boot. Your back aches. Knights, you've come to learn, do not sleep like kings. They sleep like soldiers, and they wake stiff, hungry, and already behind on their obligations. A trumpet blares. The sun gleams off your polished breastplate. A hush falls across the crowd as you lower your lance and charge into legend. Your shoulders burn. There are squabbles among the peasants over fences and pigs. There are letters to write, though you hate the pen and the ink always smudges. The barley grows poorly this year. The river is low. You hear whispers of famine to the north. The peasants bow as you pass, but their eyes do not shine with admiration. They are tired too. They know you may one day be the man who comes to take their grain for the king's levy, or their son for the next war. They do not sing songs of knights. They avoid your gaze and go back to digging in the dirt. You are a warrior. Yes, but also a landlord, a mediator, a servant to your lord's endless demands. Your squire brings you a bowl of something that may have once been stew, now more of a gray slop with the occasional gristle. You eat because you must, not because you wish to. You eat in silence, alone, listening to the wind outside, and the clanking of your own armor hanging in the corner, still caked in dried mud from last week's hunt. Chivalry, you found, is mostly paperwork and patience. You smell of horses and iron and misery, but there is more yet to do. Mud slicks the earth outside and your tunic sticks to your skin before you've taken 10 steps. You'll remember standing in your father's fields with a stick for a sword, slashing at invisible foes, your head full of legends and your heart full of pride. But now, older, sorer, heavier with the weight of 100 small disappointments, you wonder where that boy has gone. Somewhere far off an owl calls, and your squire snores lightly on the floor. You close your eyes. You will rise again at dawn, because that is what knights do. Your squire, still half a boy, and more of a nuisance than a help, struggles to buckle your greaves while you stand. Silent and sour, feeling the weight of steel settle around your limbs like a second, heavier skin. It's never as light as the bards say. It pulls at your shoulders. It grinds into your knees. It makes you move like you're wading through water and, not the warm kind. That was the dream, at least. The storybooks never told you about the smell. You wake not in a castle, but in a drafty wooden hall that smells of smoke, sweat, and last week's mutton. So you gallop in circles. You spar with dulled blades. You tilt at wooden dummies stuffed with hay, all while noblewomen peek from behind silk curtains and giggle behind gloved hands. You smile because it is expected. You bow because it is required. You sweat through your padded gambeson because you must. And then, just as quickly, you are dismissed. No applause, no praise, no glory. Only dust and aching thighs. There's no time to stretch, no time to dream. The training ground waits. You remember your first fall? It's the way the dirt filled your mouth. The laughter from the other knights, half mocking, half resigned. Everyone falls. Everyone bleeds. The code of chivalry says nothing about bruised ribs or split lips. It says nothing about the way your sword slips in your hand when the hilt is slick with sweat and your knuckles are cracked open like overripe fruit. Today, the training is worse than usual. The knight commander wants to display something fit for the court to watch and admire. Your hands are blistered, because knighthood is not all about battle. There are taxes to collect. You ride out in the afternoon heat to survey the fields. At night you return, hungry, filthy, drained. You remember being a boy. You remember dreaming of quests, of dragons, of honor. You wonder if he would still want this. You lie down again on your straw-stuffed bedding, the fire barely holding a flame. The cold creeps in through the cracks. Perhaps someday there will be glory. But not today. Not in the mud and smoke and silence, just the slow rhythm of duty. The quiet, unpoetic grind of the life you once believed was noble. You begin the day the same way you ended the last, with silence and soreness. The kind of weariness that settles not just in the muscles, but in the marrow, a quiet ache that becomes a part of you, like your name or your rank. Before the sun has risen, you're already binding your limbs with thick linen and wool, padding the skin to bear the burden of metal. They show you the glorious charges, the triumphs, the golden helms etched with lions and stags. They don't mention the bladder-crushing pressure or the way your sweat pools behind your knees. They don't mention the panic that rises when your visor locks shut and the world narrows to a slit of light and breathless darkness. Your hands tremble. You can barely lift your goblet. The squire is scrubbing mud from your greaves with a rag already soaked through. You look down at your fingers callous, swollen, bent slightly from old breaks. These are not the hands of a hero. They are the hands of a tired tradesman, worn by years of labor and burden. Your squire fumbles with the buckles again. He praises your spirited performance with a thin smile, as though you are a court jester who happened to wear iron instead of bells. The lady beside him offers you a ribbon. You take it, as is expected, though you know it means nothing. They wear their pain like their armor quietly, always, even when no one is watching. A game played by people who will never feel the bruises beneath your tunic, who will never taste blood in their mouth from biting back the pain. He means well, but his fingers are clumsy, and he smells of onions and sleep. The armor sits in the corner of your chamber, propped like a ghost against the wall. It stares at you. Stare back. Your squire snores beside the hearth. The wind presses against the shutters like a hand that cannot quite reach inside. And you think of other lives, simpler ones, softer ones. Not the weight or the heat, but the thrill. It's a sense that you are becoming something greater than yourself. But even that memory is fading now, worn thin like the leather straps that bind the steel to your bones. A smith with warm bread and calluses that came from honest work. A monk in a quiet cloister, ink-stained fingers and clean thoughts. A farmer who kneels to the soil, not to lords. There was a time you saw nobility in it. Now you see only the outline of your own exhaustion. It is a shell that protects nothing but your pride. You stand still as the plates are strapped to your frame cuirass. Falds, rouret braces, greaves, piece by piece, until you are no longer a man, but a statue of one. The armor gleams only if it's polished every day, and even then, rust creeps in like regret, eating at the edges. It chafes where the linen has shifted. It squeezes your breath until each step is its own small labor. But worse than the weight is the heat. It cooks you slowly, like meat in a lidded pot. They never tell you that armor is a prison you carry on your back. You mount your horse, or rather you are helped onto it, because climbing into a saddle with 50 pounds of metal on your frame is not gallant, but awkward, undignified, often painful. The horse bears you with a patience that you do not deserve. It is a better knight than you, in some ways steadfast, silent, enduring. You whisper thanks to it as you ride to the tilt yard, though you know it cannot understand. The joust is a farce today. A tournament held for the visiting nobles, full of forced smiles and sharpened eyes behind veils. You are to entertain them with your valor, though the lance tips are blunt and the victories meaningless. You line up, you charge, you strike, and you fall, again and again. The crowd gasps and cheers and laughs when you hit the earth, your vision spinning and your breath knocked loose from your lungs. One nobleman offers a weak clap, distracted by a jug of wine. Another knight helps you up with a grunt. You nod in silent thanks, too proud to speak. Later, you sit on a bench with your breastplate unstrapped, your tunic dark with sweat. Supper, your name is called. You rise, aching, and bow before the Lord's table. You leave the hall early, pretending fatigue but knowing shame. You lie down again on your straw bed, your body humming with dull hurt. But you are a knight, and that is what knights do. The fire crackles low. You close your eyes and try to remember what the armor felt like the first time you wore it. And still, tomorrow, you will wear it again. There is a quiet that settles around duty. Not the soft, comforting kind that drapes like a blanket over tired shoulders, but the hollow kind like the silence inside a church after the bells have stopped ringing. The words were heavy and beautiful, carved from the bones of honor. You said them with a voice full of hope, not knowing how cold they would sound echoing back at you in the long hours between dusk and sleep. You pledged to protect, to serve, to uphold the code. Inside, orders, a dispute to settle, a border to guard, noble's son gone missing near the woods. You read it slowly, the candlelight flickering as the words blur into one another. Not because you believe, but because there is nowhere else to put the sorrow. A knight must be ready, even in sleep. But you are not ready. Not anymore. You are hollowed out by duty, shaped by silence, worn down by the weight of what you carry. The armor may rest in the corner, but the vow remains on your back. The stone is cold beneath your knees. As the candle burns low, its wax a soft, steady drip like time, like loss. The wind moves through the manor stones like a whisper, old and tired. You listen, you wait for sleep. But sleep does not come easily to those who have forgotten softness. The oath is still there, pressed into your chest like a brand. You made it willingly. You would make it again. But oh, how it costs you. You whisper prayers out of habit, not hope. You ask for strength, not peace. Peace feels impossible, distant, the domain of simpler men with smaller promises. Another task, another burden wrapped in ceremony, another reminder that you do not choose your days, they are chosen for you. But oaths, like armor, grow heavy over time. Their meaning rusts, their edges dull. The great hall echoes. The walls are wide, but they do not hold warmth. They hold echoes. Laughter once lived here. Music too. Now only footsteps. You try to remember the last time someone called you by name instead of title. It was perhaps a year ago, perhaps longer. You'd walk through it each day, armor clinking faintly, as though even the metal has grown weary of its purpose. The banners still hang in the great hall, faded now, their edges frayed and curling like old parchment. You remember when their colors stirred something proud in you? Now they flutter like ghosts. You swore an oath once on bended knee, before altar and lord and sky. Today you ride alone. The road is narrow, choked with weeds and the scent of damp earth. Birds scatter from the hedgerow as your horse's hooves disturb the quiet. A woman bows from her garden, her fingers still dirt-streaked and full of onion shoots. She calls you, my lord, but says it without reverence, as though the title has worn thin from too much use. You nod, but do not stop. You are tired of answering questions you cannot solve. The wells run dry, the taxes grow high, the weather refuses to listen to prayers. And you've iron-bound, oath-sworn are, helpless before it all. You're meant to inspect the boundary stones, make your presence known, remind the villagers that their knight still watches over them. But no one is watching. A shepherd glances up from the hillside, nods once, and returns to his sheep. A girl fetching water barely spares you a glance. You do not blame them. You are not the hero from the songs. You are the man who collects fines and speaks in the name of distant lords. You pass through a hamlet where the roofs sag and the dogs bark half-heartedly. Back at the manor, a letter awaits. The seal is red, pressed with the mark of your overlord's house. You eat alone again, tearing bread that tastes of ashes and sipping wine gone slightly sour. In the chapel, you kneel. Night comes like a hush, soft and slow. You unstrap your sword and set it beside your bed. It is never far. It cannot be. You lie down, staring at the beams above, counting the cracks like stars. And so, in the darkness, you murmur it once more softly, as if saying it could make it lighter. To protect, to serve, to endure. Even if no one remembers, even if no one asks, even if no one watches. It begins long before the trumpet sounds, the waiting, the watching. The slow crawl of fear rising from the gut like smoke curling from green wood. You try not to show it, no one does. A knight must look calm, composed like a statue cast in iron. But beneath your helm, your skin is slick, your breath is shallow, your fingers twitch. The field is still quiet. Dew clings to the grass like tears not yet shed. Far in the distance, the enemy lines shimmer through the morning mist. Just shadows now, faceless and formless. But you know what waits there? A knight cannot falter, not in the heat of battle. The ground turns soft beneath your boots, wet with more than just dew. You try not to look down. You try not to see the broken hands, the twisted legs, the eyes that no longer blink. But you see them anyway. You always do. And later they will visit your dreams, silent and patient, waiting behind closed lids. You remove your gauntlet with shaking fingers and press your palm to your face. You do not want to hear who died for which banner. It changes nothing. Dead is dead. Whether they wore red or blue, or bore the sigil of a lion or a cross, it is always the same, the silence afterward. Quiet after the sword has stopped singing. The sweat is cold now. Your breath rasps. Crow calls from a fence post. It sounds like laughter. The oath you swore years ago rises like a chant in your ears, though now it feels distant, tattered, like the banners snapping above the carnage. Your horse, patient and noble, paws the ground and breathes out a low, steady snort. With the slow, dragging realization that you are still alive and that others are not. You whisper something meaningless to it, comfort, perhaps, or apology. It does not understand. But you speak anyway, because it helps. Men like you. Some older, some younger, some braver, some shaking in their boots just as you are. All of them hoping the same thing, that it will end quickly. That their armor will hold. That they will return home with breath still in their lungs. They help you from your armor, lifting the chest plate from your shoulders like a burden you're no longer strong enough to carry. You stare into the fire and wonder who among the dead had children. Who among them was newly wed? Who among them had never seen the sea? You wince as the cloth sticks to your skin. The bruises bloom like dark flowers, but they do not fade easily, not for nights. They stay curled deep in the soul, like roots in hard soil. You carry them forward, even when you march toward the next field, the next cause. The next day you must lift your sword and pretend you are still whole. You shift in the saddle, the weight of your armor pressing hard against your bones. The lance feels heavier than it should. Another knight crashes to the ground beside you, his helmet rolling away, his face bloodied and open-eyed. There's no time to look, no time to grieve. You draw your sword and swing wildly, blocked, countered, struck again. A shield slams into your ribs. You hear your own breath like wind in a broken flute. You taste metal, your own blood, perhaps. Then it begins. A cry, a signal, a sudden storm of noise and motion. A line moves, hooves, thunder, lances drop. The world narrows to a blur of earth and sky and a sliver of terror. As you charge forward into the waiting silence that follows the first clash, you hit something, someone, and the force rips through your arm like lightning. Your lance shatters. You're nearly thrown. And yet you keep going, because there is no choice. The fight stretches on and fits and starts. Blades clang, men fall, screams rise and fade, and then just as suddenly it ends. It's not with triumph, not with music, but with exhaustion, with smoke. You sit beneath a tree near the edge of the field. Your armor is dented. Your arm may be broken. You're not sure. Everything aches. Squires search the field for the fallen. Priests murmur final rites. You avoid their eyes. You do not wish to know their names. You return to your manor late, blood still dried in the cracks of your knuckles. The servants are careful not to ask questions. You sit by the hearth alone, a cup of wine untouched by your side. And you wonder, too, how long it will take for this memory to soften, for the faces to blur, for the sounds to fade. You lie down in your bed and close your eyes. And though your body sleeps, the battle does not end. There are rules, of course. Pages upon pages of them, passed down from lips long dead, written in ink, faded to brown and bound in cracked leather. The code of chivalry. Honor, loyalty, mercy, courage. Words meant to polish the soul like fine silver. You recited them as a boy, starry-eyed and sure. You believed in them. You clung to them like a torch in the dark. But torches sputter. And belief, like parchment, can be worn through by damp hands and harsh weather. Today you are asked to judge a dispute between two petty lords' neighbors, with fat land and thin patience. One accuses the other of theft, of betrayal, of crossing some invisible line drawn between hedgerows and pride. You chew slowly, swallowing not just the meat but the questions it brings. And yet, in the back of your mind, a boy's voice asks you quietly, "Is this what you swore?" When did honor become something you wear like a cloak, fine on the outside but hiding stains beneath? When did the code become a costume? You used to look for signs in the moments, guidance, glimpses of something beyond this earthbound struggle, symbol of something you once believed in. But now they are just stars, cold and distant, unmoved by your choices. And how many times have you bent it until it cracked? Just slightly, just enough to keep the peace. For names to sign things, for men to enforce silence, you listen. Seated in your best tunic, the one with embroidery at the cuffs and the faint smell of lavender soap, you nod, gratitude. The room is quiet, save for the ticking of your heartbeat and the creak of old wood. The night is long. The pillow smells of smoke and wool. You close your eyes and try to remember the first time someone called you Sir, the pride. The fire, the way your chest lifted as if the world had finally seen you. A whispered warning about rebellion in the South. You smile faintly. He still believes you think, still sharpens your sword with reverence, still speaks of valor and virtue, as if they are carved in stone rather than smeared in mud. Politics again. Honor twisted into parchment and ink, traded in closed rooms, bartered like sheep at market. You set the letter aside. You will respond tomorrow or the day after. These things never truly rest, but you can. But now it is simply water. It's cold and clean, but not enough to wash away what clings to you. You ask questions. You weigh truth like grain on a scale. But all you see are two men maneuvering, not for justice, but advantage. Each sentence is a weapon, each courtesy a trap. There is no honor here, only strategy. You rule in favor of the one whose allegiance is more useful. You do not feel good about it, but you do not feel bad either. You feel nothing. The sun filters through the branches, turning the dust to gold, and for a moment the world seems still. Birds call. A squirrel chitters and leaps to another limb. A stream murmurs under a mossy bridge. You dismount to let your horse drink, and you kneel beside the water, cupping it in your palms and letting it run cool over your face. That, perhaps, is worse. Afterward, you ride home along the forest path, the trees closing in on either side like old hands. You remember a time when this would have stirred something in you? Wonder, perhaps. Back at the manor, you find a letter waiting. Another lord seeks your favor, a marriage alliance, a land dispute, or at least pretend to. You dine in silence. The fire crackles. Servant pours your wine without a word. You tell yourself it is what a good knight does, that mercy lies in compromise, that the world is not as simple as the old tales pretend. You rise from the table and step out into the courtyard. The stars are rising, scattered across the heavens like forgotten prayers. You walk the perimeter of the manor, feeling the weight of your sword at your side. It used to feel like purpose. Now it feels like punctuation. Inside, your squire snores gently, curled by the hearth like a dog in winter. You envy him, but you do not correct him. You settle into bed, the candle flickering low beside you. But the fire has cooled, and the world you've found looks not for knights but for tools. And still, you will rise again tomorrow, because that, too, is part of the code. Even if no one believes in it anymore. Even if you're not sure you do. The stone walls are thick, but they do not keep out the cold. You live in a castle, yes, but it does not feel like living. It feels more like existing inside a husk, a shell built to repel enemies and comfort. The walls are gray, worn smooth by wind and rain and the slow passing of years, but they do not soften with age. The conversations are formal, measured. Everyone is watching, calculating, waiting for a pause long enough to redirect the talk toward land, taxes, or marriage. You chew your food and speak when required, but you do not taste what you eat. It might be venison, or goose, or some well-dressed pottage, but it all turns to ash when paired with the quiet weight of duty. The candles glow like stars behind the stained-glass window, dimmed by soot and shadow. You used to kneel there after battle, hoping to wash away what your sword could not. But over time, the prayers became quieter, less certain, another decision to make on behalf of a crown you have not seen in years. You will answer it tomorrow or the day after. Perhaps you will not answer at all. And the silence afterward offered no answer. You lie back, hands folded, and stare upward at the wooden beams. This is what you paid for the spurs, the sword, the seat at court. You are a knight. You do not weep. You do not yearn. You endure. You try to remember the last time someone sat beside you here. Not a servant, not a squire, but someone who spoke your name like it mattered. Someone who saw past the title, past the armor, into the quieter part of you that aches for something simple, something kind. They loom around you, high and hollow, filled with echoes that seem to grow louder when night comes. You keep it close, though you do not fear attack. It is simply part of you now, as natural as your own hands. You wonder sometimes if you will forget how to be without it. Your chambers are large but not warm. Fire burns in the hearth, but only in the evenings when the cold presses hardest through the arrow slits in the walls. You do not know their names, do not know your thoughts. There are no easy conversations here, no shared jokes by the fire, no idle songs to break the long hush of stone. Everything is structured, silent, stiff with propriety. You have rank, but you do not have company. The tapestries hang stiff and faded, their colors muted by time, their stories half lost in moth-eaten threads. Even your bed, with its heavy canopy and layers of wool and linen, feels more like a resting place than a refuge. Lie in it, but rarely do you feel rested. There are servants, of course. They clean, they cook, they bow when you pass, but their faces are blank, their eyes wary. The hall, the great hearth crackles and spits, trying to warm the long table where you sometimes dine with visiting knights or lesser lords. You walk the battlements to clear your head, boots scraping softly against stone. The wind lifts your cloak and pulls at your hair. Below, the torches flicker at the gatehouse, and somewhere in the distance a dog barks into the dark. You stare into the night, into the black woods beyond your lands. And for a moment you wonder what it would be like to walk into them. Not as a knight, but as no one at all. There is no one to tell this to. You pass the chapel on your way back in. You always do. You feel its presence more than you feel God. In your chambers, your sword rests on the chest at the foot of your bed. A letter sits unopened on your writing desk, sealed with wax you do not recognize. Likely more duties. You light a small candle by your bedside. Its flame wavers, casting shadows that dance across the bare stone wall. But this is the cost, and that's so you close your eyes and let the silence cover you like a second blanket, heavy, cold, and constant. The castle holds you through the night, but it does not hold you gently. He follows you like a shadow, but lighter, quieter, always a step behind, always watching. His name is Tomasor. Perhaps it's Elliot or Rolf. You've had a few over the years. He still believes in stories. You catch him practicing with a wooden sword behind the stables, pretending to be you. When each day was a step toward glory, when you still imagined your name would be carved into marble or sung over winter fires. When the world had sharp edges and clear lines, good, evil, valor, shame. Before those lines smudged, softened, turned into compromises spoken in quiet corners and choices that haunted your sleep. It drifts through the door like smoke. It reminds you of your mother's voice once, before she died. He sets it by your bedside, careful not to wake you. But you are already awake. You often are. Long before the rooster, long before the sun, you lie there still as stone and wait for the day to begin again, the same as the last, with armor, with orders, with silence. The way she used to sing while sewing, while stirring, while brushing the hair from your brow. You wonder if Tomas hums to calm himself, or you. Will he one day sit alone in a castle hall too large for his voice, wondering if the old oaths were worth the toll? Not you exactly, but the version of you that lives in songs, the version who saves the helpless and rides out at dawn with sunlight on his helm and justice on his breath. He swings wide and clumsy, grinning, then stiffens when he sees you watching. You say nothing, just nod once, then walk on. To leave the armor behind and find a quiet village with warm bread and a simple life. To grow vegetables, to raise a family, to sleep deeply, free from the weight of steel and duty and the ache that never quite leaves your bones. He sees the way your hands shake when you lift your gauntlets, the way you stretch your back with a quiet grimace after riding too far. He sleeps, curled beside the hearth, small still, but not for long. You close your eyes. He hears your breath catch when the firelight glances off old scars. You do not speak of them, he does not ask. But you know the questions live behind his eyes. Did it hurt? Were you afraid? Did it matter? Their faces blur over time, but their eyes never do. Wide, eager, hopeful. Watching you strap on your armor. You know he needs to learn the truth slowly, the same way you did through repetition. Through injury, through quiet disappointments stacked like stones. You cannot save him from that. You can only watch. Watching you return from battle with new dents, new silence, new weight hanging on your shoulders that they cannot carry for you. But they still try. He's young, this one. Not yet grown into his limbs, not yet calloused in the places that will soon grow hard and permanent. You remember what it felt like to be that young? He carries your sword now. He polishes it daily with reverence. He oils your armor. He fetches your meals. He asks questions when he dares, though you rarely answer them. Not because you do not care, but because you know what the answers will do. Some things are better left in silence. He sees you struggle, though you try to hide it. Sometimes at night you hear him humming softly as he sharpens your blade. The tune unsure, borrowed from some half-remembered ballad. He brings you water in the mornings, steaming and scented faintly with mint leaves. And you wonder, as you sip the water and press your fingers into your aching temples, what will become of him? Will he rise as you did? Will he earn his knighthood with bruises and obedience and years of quiet suffering? Or will he die before then, young and shining, his blood soaked into foreign soil, remembered briefly and forgotten thoroughly? You do not know, you cannot say. But sometimes when he hands you your sword and looks up with those steady, hopeful eyes, you want to tell him to run. But you don't. You say nothing, because you know he would not listen. You know how strong the dream is, how it clings like honey, like sap, like a song you can't stop humming, and so you do. You watch him grow. You watch yourself fade. You lie in bed again that night, the candle low, the shadows long, and dream of the time when you were him, and everything still felt like it meant something. The battle is over. Not in the way the poets sang, with trumpets blaring and flags raised high, but in a way that sits heavy in your bones, in the hollow between one breath and the next. The field is quiet now, save for the slow rustle of wind through torn banners and the soft moan of the wounded who lie scattered like broken dolls across the churned earth. But here now, in this solemn hush, there is only the silence after the storm. Your horse stumbles as you lead him, favoring a hind leg. You whisper to him gently, not with command, but with comfort, because tonight you both will sleep light and dream heavy. The camp waits beyond the hill, a fire, a crust of bread, maybe a song to chase back the ghosts. But the road from the battlefield to peace is long, and lined with the memories of faces you'll never forget, though you never knew their names. A silence that fills your ears like water and settles in your chest like dust. Not the battles themselves, but what comes after the emptiness, the aching quiet. The question of whether the cause was worth the cost. You were promised honor, but it came wrapped in sorrow. You were promised glory, but it came hand in hand with grief. And now you know. The true weight of knighthood is not in the armor you wear, but in the silence you carry. You feel older than you were this morning. It's not just in your joints or your muscles, but somewhere deeper, where no balm or salve can reach. The clang of swords and the cries of men have faded into a hush so thick it feels sacred, like a cathedral after the candles have all gone out. You sit beside your horse who is breathing raggedly, eyes rolling from pain or fear, or both, and your gauntlets are slick with something that might be blood, but you no longer look closely. Your shoulder aches from the weight of your sword, though it hangs limp now, forgotten in your grasp. You were told there would be glory here, that you would feel triumphant, like a hero from the old songs. But all you feel is the pressing quiet, the strange intimacy of shared suffering. A boy no older than your squire lies a few paces away, hand curled as if in sleep, armor dented like a crushed cup. You do not know if he was friend or foe. It no longer matters. Out here, on this field that smells of wet soil and iron and smoke, everyone is just a body that once hoped to live through the day. The sun is still high, but it feels dim somehow, as if even the sky has looked away. You hear the distant voice of a commander giving orders, but the words slide past you like leaves in a stream. The spell of the moment is unbroken. No one taught you what to do after the killing stops. You were trained to charge, to block, to strike. You were told how to kneel before your lord and how to ride out in fine armor. But no one spoke of this, the stillness, the smallness, the way your hands shake when there is no more enemy to fight, only yourself and what you've seen. Later, you will be praised. Your name may be spoken in a great hall, lit with fire and song. Your deeds embroidered in tapestries, half true and brightly colored. You rise slowly, your legs stiff from kneeling beside the fallen. This is the part of being a knight no one ever warned you about. It is quiet in the hall tonight, not the quiet of peace, but the quiet that follows noise after the feasting has ended. After the fire has dimmed, after the laughter has faded like the echo of a distant bell, your gloves lie folded in your lap. You do not wear them indoors anymore. You no longer need to grasp reins, or hilts, or the hands of lords who only shake yours when they must. These days your fingers curl around the handle of a wooden cup. Warm from the wine, you sip more slowly than you used to. Most of them are gone now, fallen in wars you barely remember the cause of. The way your breath fogs when the wind slips beneath the shutters, the silence. Married off, retired to lands you will never visit. The time you unseated a baron's champion with a single tilt. The siege where you climbed the ladder, while arrows hissed like snakes around your ears. You sip your wine and wonder what it is they speak of in the trees. You think of the sword that hangs above the mantle. It has not been drawn in years. Its edge, once keen as a whisper, has dulled beneath the layers of time and stillness.
How are you?
Perhaps they call out across the fields to say, I am still here. Perhaps that is all anyone really wants to say. The last of the fire sighs into ember. The winter you held a pass alone, with nothing but frostbitten hands and stubborn pride, buried under stone or not buried at all. That serving faithfully would shield you from this slow vanishing. But honor does not warm your bones at night. The moon hangs heavy and white in the sky, watching with the same pale indifference it always has. Your reflection glimmers faintly in the glass. You do not look like the knight they used to sing of. You look like someone who once was something. As you lower yourself into the same seat where you have sat for years, you begin to wonder, was it ever really glory? Or was it just noise? It does not bring laughter to empty rooms or soften the ache in your knees when the wind shifts. The hall darkens. The silence deepens. The rushes beneath your feet no longer carry the scent of fresh herbs, only the stale remains of wine and footsteps. There is nothing left to command, no one left to impress. The pages no longer glance up at you with awe. They have seen too much. They have polished your boots and carried your bloodied tunic. To fight back the creeping quiet that waits for every man, no matter how loudly he once rode through the world. They know that the legends skip over nights like this where a knight is no more than a man sitting in a room too big for his voice. The long table stretches before you, empty now, save for a few scattered crumbs. Trays of roasted meat would pass from hand to hand, and jugs of ale would vanish like water from a desert spring. The dogs would bark, the fire would crackle, the musicians would strike up their fiddles and lyres, and for a moment you'd feel that maybe the world was not so heavy. And a candle guttering in its dish, the wax pooling slow and soft like a forgotten prayer. You sit in your chair, the hub-backed one by the hearth, where your armor used to rest beside you, where your voice once carried orders that mattered. The servants pass like ghosts. They do not speak unless you do, and you do not. Your hall was once filled with clamor. Men fresh from campaign, their cheeks still red from cold winds. Slapping backs and spinning tales, each story louder than the last. But that was long ago. And what remains? The slow drip of wax. The creak of old beams. You used to fill this silence with stories of your own boasts, perhaps half true and brightly polished. But now even your stories sit unused, growing dusty in your mind like forgotten tapestries behind closed doors. Tonight you hear the owls outside. One calls low and long. Another answers. The fire sinks lower. The coals glow like buried embers in your chest. There was a time you believed honor would be your reward. You stand slowly, joints cracking, and walk to the window. You draw the curtains closed, gently, as you return to your chair. Perhaps all of it the oaths, the titles, the armor. The pageantry was simply a way to keep the silence at bay. You close your eyes, and the silence, faithful as ever, stays with you. And at last, when all the days have passed, when your name has faded from the lips of squires and no more, parchment bears the seal of your command, you begin to understand what it truly means to have worn the armor, not the ceremony of it, not the clang of steel or the applause in the courtyard, or even the moment you felt the lance shatter in your grip. No, the truth is quieter than all that, and heavier. You haven't touched it in years. The leather straps are stiff. The joints creak more than you do. It no longer fits you, not just in size, but in spirit. You look at it the way you might look at a relic from another life. Some simply vanished between one year and the next. Their names drift through your thoughts like fallen leaves. You keep them close, even if no one else remembers. Skin you once wore when you were someone else entirely. You listen not for footsteps or banners, but for the wind through the branches, the hum of bees. It's not one of jousts and charges, but of small moments gently held. Of tending the fire without haste. Of watching the sun shift across the wooden floor, letting the world pass without chasing it. The soft creak of the barn door swinging lazily open, and perhaps once that meant something. Perhaps it still does. But now, it means walking without armor, listening more than speaking, resting more than striving, and understanding that the world does not need your blade to keep turning. It is in your hands, now worn and veined, no longer calloused from swordplay, but marked by the slow work of age. It is in the way you walk slower than before, with a limp you never had time to notice while the battles still called your name. Instead, your ending crept in like dusk gradually, without announcement. It arrived in the form of quiet mornings, soft bread and boiled eggs, of dogs lying too long in the sun, of breezes that carried no war horn, no rider's dust, only the smell of lavender and dung and wet grass. It is in the way the children of the manor look at you not in awe, not in fear, but with that gentle curiosity they reserve for things that no longer move quickly. The servants wait for your nod to start the day's work. You speak less than you used to. Your words have grown fewer, but softer. You have learned that speaking loudly is not the same as being heard. There was a time you thought death in battle would be your ending, a noble fall, a banner fluttering, perhaps a ballad, but that death never came. Your armor hangs in the corner, draped with a cloth to keep off the rust. You live now by the rhythm of seasons, not by campaigns. The barley fields need tending. The thatch needs replacing. The sword you once carried sits beneath your bed. It's not because you fear thieves or war, but because you haven't yet decided what to do with it. It is no longer a tool, but a memory sharp in places, dull in others. You took it up when you were a boy, barely able to lift its weight, full of visions of dragons and duels and eternal honor. And now, in these long, golden evenings, you wonder if it carried more sorrow than glory. You remember them all, the ones who rode beside you. Some died with swords in hand, others with fever. Sometimes, when the sky is the color of old vellum and the birds fall silent just before the rain, you sit on the stone bench beneath the apple tree and close your eyes. This, too, is a kind of knighthood, you think. You were a knight. So you rise slowly, feel the grass beneath your feet, and stretch your arms wide as if to embrace the sky. You set down the sword not in surrender, but in peace, and the earth, soft and forgiving, accepts your weight without judgment. Here at the end, you are only a man again. At last, that is enough. Thank you for joining me on this quiet journey through the hidden world of knights in the Middle Ages, as the stories fade into the night. May you carry with you a gentle understanding of the weight behind the armor, the silent struggles, the lonely battles, and the quiet moments that shaped a life you ever saw. If this tale brought you peace or a moment of reflection, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing so that others may find calm in these stories too. Until we meet again, may your nights be peaceful, your dreams soft, and your heart light.